and now me and Joe are going to do our review for the French animated series going by the name of Wakfu, which was recommended by you, Kimono Joe,
Mm-hmm.
all those months ago.
Yep.
And it took me this long to watch it, and I don't know why. Well, I have a list of things I watch, and I finally got around to it, and now that I've seen it, I think for the record, I say I was happy with it. I'm sorry, people. There'll be a spoiler. I'm not going to give my rating though. I was happy with it, but even if I wasn't, I still would have reviewed it because it is got a lot of people. A lot of people like it, and
Mm-hmm.
as I said, I wanted to bring awareness to other shows doing other things. So let's start. People usually know how we go through our reviews. We have categories that we go through, but before that, I want you, Joe, to talk about your experience again about the series, how you got into it, the game, and just a brief rundown of how you found out about the series and what it's about generally as well.
Well, how I got into it, I can't remember where was the genesis of it. It was either a friend of mine, well, an online friend of mine who lives in France. Her and I were talking about animated series going on, and she mentioned that she actually works for like the company that produces Wakfu, but she's like a background artist on the video game itself. So hearing about it, I started looking it up. And also at the time, my younger brother, he's more on the 4chan website a lot more than I am. So he knows a little bit more about like what's going on in like the BitTorrent sites going on of like what's popular and what are people talking about on the board Co and A.
I am such a novice on 4chan. I know what that means, but I don't really understand it.
Yeah, A is just their general anime board, and Co is their comics and cartoon board, which
Okay.
Wakfu kind of falls somewhere on either board, since it's both a cartoon, but it's also very much like an anime in itself.
Mm.
Yeah, but somewhere in that, I got hooked onto the show, particularly because all I could find at the time was a YouTube clip of a fight scene between the lead villain and a dragon. And it was just one of those things like, wow, this is badass. I need to see more of this.
Mm. All right. So you watched the series before you played the game, then?
Because technically the game was not out yet when the series was running. Like, I think season one finished up, and then the game was released. Well, it was in open beta at the time for people to check out, and shortly after, it was released for everyone free to play and all.
A lot of people, from my research, I've seen are really baffled that the game is really popular,
Mhm.
but this series has not got a wide release. It hasn't got a Western release at all.
Oh yeah, they apparently did try it because according to Wikipedia, they have a few people listed as English voice actors for some of the
Yes.
characters, but I think
Yeah.
that was more of like a test run to see if the show was going to do well or not, and they just dubbed a couple of episodes.
Yeah. I heard that they only dubbed the first 3 episodes. That's what I heard as well.
It just baffles me as well. Like, why did you stop? Did you not see where this show was going? Because honestly, the way whenever I try to introduce this show to anyone, I just say take like maybe the first season of Avatar and like the ending half of season three of Avatar and just mash them together, and that's the first season of Wakfu.
That's what sold me. When you told me that, but on our previous podcast,
Hmm.
that's what sold me. And as I was watching it, there was times where I was thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? But at the end of the day, that is actually an accurate description.
Oh yeah.
But when we get into the review, I'll elaborate on where my confusion lied. So, all right. Well, okay, we've got to understand how you got into it, and we all know how I got into it. So now let's actually talk about the title itself in its entirety. And let me read some information, Joe.
Hmm.
And as I said to you before we started recording, if I mess up, feel free to put your foot in my mouth and correct me.
Okay.
All right. So this is the information that's just copied and pasted from the information site, Wikipedia, whatever. Wakfu is a 2008 French cartoon by Ankahama Animation, set within the world of the MMORPG of the same name running today, Wakfu, or that's the game name. See, I
Yeah.
nearly messed up already.
Well, that was one thing I did forget to mention, that Wakfu is technically a sequel to a MMORPG called Dofus. And the reason why it's a sequel is that it takes place 1,000 years after Dofus.
Yep, that's exactly right. The show follows a group of adventurers aiding an orphaned hero, the main character, which is named Yugo, who was left in the care of a chef when he was a baby. 12 years later, after his adoption by the chef, he realizes he has really special powers and is part of a special race of creatures with incredible powers. A mad time-wielding inventor, Nox, who wants to suck the life force of all the creatures in the series, which I believe is Wakfu, right? That's the life force.
Yeah, Wakfu, as kind of a weird thing that was kind of hard to understand, is that Dofus in the previous series was the main energy source, which, as they described it, is dragons are like the godlike creatures of the world. Whenever they are born, they release energy known as Dofus. But then in this series, Wakfu is like the much stronger version of it. It's the life force that's in everything now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that clarifies it. So the main antagonist, whose name is Nox, he's trying to suck all the Wafu out of all life forces to achieve his mysterious goals. Yugo starts a journey to find his family, the original special family, with the help of his friends, and together they go through an adventure where they battle through various dangers, have comical misadventures, all the while being followed by the mysterious Nox. So that's a very, very basic synopsis of the series, people. And yeah, I just want to also say that the show initially is aimed, well, from what they said on the website as well, the target audience was between 8 and 10 years old. It was, aimed to be a kids show. But there's tons of adult humor,
Mhm.
tons of fan service,
Oh yeah.
violence, and as the story progresses, it gets darker and it increases in terms of depth, and that is something it definitely shares in common with Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah. And the other thing, we should probably mention this as well, just so people kind of understand a little bit more. The other thing that's much like Avatar is that the world of Wakfu has various race of people who all have special talents that are only special to them, much like we had the firebenders, earthbenders, waterbenders, and airbenders.
And this is one of the things I actually loved about this show. So many different creatures,
Oh
so
yeah.
many different, it just felt to a point. I actually thought maybe it was a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sometimes I thought maybe there's too much variation in the show. Maybe they should have kept it more simple. But to be honest with you, it really kept my attention that there were so many different creatures. Even the cast itself, the crew itself, all have different powers. We'll get into that
Yeah.
later. But they're all different. But the people they come across as well, to the little creatures, to the people in different towns, it's just all different. It's so nice and vibrant. It feels like a game. This is the kind of thing you find in an RPG. You go into different places and you have different areas with different elements, and it's really cool, man. So
Yeah.
from this point on, Joe, we're gonna go into the categories: animation, sound, storyline, characters.
Mhm.
Likes, dislikes, and then give our final thoughts. So first of all, we'll start with the animation. And I've got some notes here that I'll read, and then we'll give our opinion on here. So, first of all, this is animated in Flash.
Yeah, it's from what I understand, a friend of mine telling me is that it's part Flash, but with a little bit of CG rendering, particularly
Yeah,
whenever the characters are turning around and such.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought this was actually my notes actually say it's 90% 90% Flash, 10% CGI, just like you said. And we'll also mention there's two OVAs.
Hmm.
That one of them is produced by Madhouse, which is anime studio,
And also co-directed by Masaki Yusawa, who did Mind Games. So that's one thing to note, people.
One of my favorite animated movies of all time, by the way.
Hmm.
And the second OVA was actually animated by Studio Ghibli, which was based on the character Ogrest. Am I saying that right?
I think so. Ogra, who is basically the perpetrator that causes a great event that changes the world between Dofus and the Wakfu timeline.
That's funny. Studio Ghibli and Madhouse did the OVAs, which are separate from the series, where they're supplementary to the series.
Yeah,
So when you hear these two massive names are got involved with this show, that should tell you people. That should tell you something right there.
yeah.
But
I'm even
let
still wondering why they didn't license it then if like both Madhouse and Ghibli were willing to put down their own efforts to work on this show as well.
even the shorts, even I thought even they would just get their separate shorts released because on its own those two are good. But we'll get to that later. But
Yeah.
let me just talk about what I feel about the animation, which kind of you've already kind of covered it when you spoke about the variation in characters.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Flash, this is what Flash can do.
Yep.
Flash has come so far. I mean, we're on Spiel.com, a site that uses Flash animation to do amusing movie reviews.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see this, I'm like, this is where we're at now. You're telling me someone with a computer, even if it's a team of people. I'm not saying that this was animated by one guy. I know this was quite an expensive animated series to make anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but they did this on Flash.
Oh yeah.
So impressive.
And they also didn't just kind of cheap and cut around it. Like you see a lot of Flash series in America where they just kind of copy and paste the same character models for background use and whatnot. Whereas in Wakfu, unless it's intended that they're supposed to look like something, you will see like characters in the background that all have their own unique character design to it.
The thing I don't like about Flash is sometimes the movements of Flash characters have a puppet look to them sometimes, which I don't really like.
Oh yeah, that kind of jerky, like moving on a hinge type look.
Yes, exactly. And all Flash suffer from it, but this series did the best, especially when you combine it with a little CG. It just brought the fluidness in it, and because we'll get into this in the storyline part, the first half of the show to me is more of the warm up, get kind of playful part.
Yeah,
At that point, I thought this is okay.
yeah.
The second half, the action, totally. I was like, wow, this is what you can do with Flash. So, character designs, excellent. I really like the variation. I thought they was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
The main character, Hugo, him in his sock hat, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Near the end, he brings up something about that doesn't get resolved, which we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
And all the characters are designed so well, so uniquely. Even though it's a kids show, the women have breasts. Usually in American Western cartoons, they wouldn't even show, teenagers having breasts because they stay away from sexualization. But
Yeah.
this show didn't stray from that. There was even times where girls got black eyes, broken teeth, and I really, really, really like the animation. I was surprised how much it grew on me. At first, I thought it was okay, but by the end of the series, I was thoroughly impressed that this was done by Flash, and it was that impressive.
And I think part of it is kind of like, as we said, that they're using a little bit of CG for it. And I think that's the key to making these things work. Kind of like, we didn't talk about it earlier when we were talking about Disney shutting down their 2D department, but how that short film, Paper Man, was done with like CG mainly, but it was made to look like it's a 2D animated film.
Yeah.
So that's probably the trick that people are going to need to learn later on to make shows better looking is like you can have CG undertones, but then also have a layer on top of it for Flash, which not only that, apparently they do kind of the same thing in the TV series Archer as well. Yeah, like that was something I recently heard, and I don't know how true it is. I would need to dive deeper into it. But they say apparently the entire thing is done in CG, like all the character models and everything, but they put enough filters over it to try to make it look more like it's an animated show. I mean, like more with flash animation and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously, did you like the animation?
Oh yeah. I mean, in the very early stages, it did kind of pop out a little more in certain segments. Like there was another short that we forgot to talk about, but this was like not really a short, like a special. This was more like a early concept video that tells the story of one of the other like side characters to it. Like in that one, things just kind of seemed like they stood out a little bit further than they should be. Like things weren't
Yeah.
fully connected to them and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have the name of that one. Let me just check here. Nah, the Nox one's called Noxy Million, and the Ghibli one was called Ogrest, and the one we're talking about now, isn't that Sandy's Master? That one you're talking about?
Yes, the oh shoot, I didn't write down his name either. So, but I think his name is Goldar or
Yeah, I
Goldar.
think that's it.
Yeah, and it was basically a story about him, which it probably wouldn't make as much of an effect because even from what I hear, like since that was an early concept video of what Wakfu was going to be about, that some people don't really count it as canon because of where it ends. But at the same time, we still don't know anything between seeing that character then to when we get to be introduced to him later on. So
Mm.
we don't know what his story fully is.
Considering what happens to him in that special,
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised he could even smile in the series.
Mm-hmm.
But people, you have to watch it to find out what I'm talking about there. So suffice to say, I think we both really enjoyed the animation there. I was thoroughly impressed to see that's how far Flash can come. So it was good. It was eye opening for me to see this is the limits of Flash right now. Well, maybe not. Maybe they can take it even further. But
Yeah,
if this is what Flash can do, I am like, wow. Flash alone is a great platform for making animated movies. So
yeah. And if I had the chance, I would tell people who work on shows like Johnny Test to eat a dick.
Johnny Test.
He,
All right, man. Let's move on to the second section, which is sound.
mm-hmm,
Now, it's kind of cheeky for me to say French is my second language, but it kind of is because it's the only other language I know apart from English.
mm-hmm.
And I kind of dropped out of learning French in high school, secondary school. This was a good show to kind of show how much I knew. Like, oh, I know French. Bonjour, bonjour.
Yeah.
Comment tu t'appelles? Je m'appelle Jesse James, whatever. Listening to the show, I was like, yeah, I don't really know that much French. So, um, listening to it in French, what can I say? It's like the French is such a romantic language. When I
Oh
was
yeah.
listening to it, sometimes I was kind of laughing to myself. I can't take the villain seriously. He sounds like "Je me do ta belle, good da da, good da da." It's like you're not threatening, but later on I got used to it, and the bottom line is I can't judge the French voice acting because I don't speak French. I
Yeah.
only understand very little, petite of it anyway. But it was good. From what I could tell, it was good. The French speak a bit fast, so sometimes it was like, And by the way, the version I had,
Mm-hmm.
the subs were terrible.
Yeah.
The subs were fucking terrible, and sometimes it made it a chore. And they kept these idiots who subtitled it would leave notes, sometimes saying I couldn't be bothered to translate the song properly. You guys heard this before. I was like, what? The worst fan subbing I've ever seen
Yeah.
in a long time.
I think I got those same ones. The other thing that was kind of a bother with the subs was that the character Tristapon, or as you said, Sadly Grove, that was the
Mhm.
other thing, is that they seemed like some of the subbers couldn't decide what name to just stick with. Because
Yes.
his name, when they're speaking in French, is Tristapon. Like they even call him Pen Pen for short. But then in the subs, they're calling him Sadly Grove or Groby for short.
Exactly.
And I was like,
Exactly.
well, what's this going on about? So, like, I don't know what the deal was with that. Like, if maybe Tristapon in some weird way translates to English as Sadly Grove.
I have to say, I'm very, very disappointed with the production team that they just didn't have a native subtitled language. I mean, I understand dubbing is a very long processing,
Mm,
sorry, a very long process, but you can't tell me you need subtitles to get aware. I mean, at the very least. Now, I'm not on the flip side of things. We watch anime a lot,
yeah,
and we do watch fan subs. So I'm not going to say that the Japanese do subs. They don't do subs either. But I would think French would learn from anime and be like, "No, we need to get this subbed as well, just so we can get an English audience in,
oh yeah.
because we don't have a dub." And they didn't even have that, which leaves us with this terrible, terrible sub,
But
which makes it hard for me to recommend in some aspect. To be honest with you.
yeah, I know it's a little bit of a bother, but it's one of those things, it's a small hurdle you have to get over, especially because if you're just gonna decide you're not gonna watch it because bad subs, then you're still doing a disservice to yourself without checking out the series.
True. I persevered because I really wanted to see how good the show was. And what I will say is, near the end of the series, it looked like a serious group got involved because the last half of the series was subbed properly. It
Yeah.
was the first half that was terrible.
Yeah, and I think part of that was that the first half of the series is more kind of jokey and whatnot, so there's like a lot of jokes in the dialogue, which, from what I understand from translators, humor is always the hardest thing to translate
True.
because both there's like maybe play on words or puns that you would only
Yeah.
get if you spoke the native language,
Yeah.
or even like cultural events or relevance to a joke that we still wouldn't get because we don't live in that country.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I agree. It's comedy is complicated. That's where you need to be proficiently, fluent in that language to do it properly, or it just won't make any sense to the unnative speaker.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in general, but going back to the actual language as well, French, it sounded okay. It was a little bit. The Japanese is a hard language, so you get all these listeners to Japanese. I'm used to hearing that stony voice, even with female characters. So
Yeah.
the French are so kind of more flighty and light. Even the villains in the show, but it's just an adjustment.
Yeah. I do think that it does kind of add a bit of a flair to some of the characters. Like, for instance, the villain Nox and how, like, his mannerisms and how he would speak with that, like, kind of over, like, metallic voice.
His was the best voice in the show
Oh, yeah.
for me.
Especially also his laugh, that, like, cackling madness in his laugh.
His voice, his performance just superseded his character to me because so many things would go on. He would teleport all over the place, and he had all those watch eyes coming down, and he would talk really fast. It's crazy, man. Yeah, it was a great performance, and again, it's a shame. So disappointed I ain't got to hear a dub for this.
Yeah.
I think this would translate so well in English.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially because even with the humor aside, there's like ways around that could easily fix it up. Because, I mean, outside of just like play on words, which the series of Wakfu, there is like a lot of puns and whatnot. Like, for instance, Nox, he's part of, like, the people that can manipulate time are referred to as Zaylors. If you spell that backwards, that's Rolex, a watch company. So get it? Time is,
Nice.
yeah.
Did you figure that out on your own?
Oh no, someone pointed out because there's apparently a lot of jokes like that in the some of the character names. Like for instance, the character Amalia, which we'll probably get to the characters more in depth.
Oh, that's the next category. Go on.
Yeah, Amalia,
Hmm?
then she's like from the people that can control plants and whatnot. They're known as like the Sadias. And I forget how it is, but if you arrange the words around correctly, it spells out Adidas.
Adidas. Right. Oh, clever. It's wasted, isn't it? It's just waste. These things are wasted on us. Anyway, let's just hope our review gets more people into it so they can
Oh yeah.
get a dub. All right, let's move on to the characters and the character development and the characterization. So, I've got a list of the characters here, and this is another point where you're gonna have to put your foot in my mouth. I might
All right.
mispronunciate some of the names, so you help me along here. And I'll name a character, and we'll both give our thoughts on them. And then after that, we'll talk about what we feel about the general characterization and character development of the show.
All right.
All right, the main character, Hugo, I really liked him. He was cool. He was exactly what I would want my character to be. Not obnoxious, because I don't like a Sonic type character, obnoxious asshole kind of character. He was
Yeah.
just a really cool, very nice kid, just generally likable. Generally, really liked him. Near the end, when he was doing his training, I liked him even more.
Yeah. He is pretty much like what I prefer in series, like, because he is like very upbeat. He's happy. He's like amazed by the things he sees. Like in a way, like going back to Avatar, he's a lot like Aang in that respect.
He is.
Mm.
He is. He is. I can't disagree with that. And just this isn't a spoiler. You find out in episode 1. His power is frigging cool.
Yeah.
But it was bugging me that he's a kid, so I didn't expect him to master it straight away. But I was like, oh, the possibilities of your power if you just. But near the end, he starts using it in the way I wanted him to anyway, where he
Yeah.
becomes kind of untouchable.
Yeah. Which people, just to give you an idea, basically, Yugo is from a race of people known as the Eliotrops, and he's like one of the last few remaining. Like, he didn't even know he was one when he was born, but he's able to manipulate the energy of Wakfu to a degree, and how it comes out is that he can make dimensional gates in a way, like a short range teleportation, pretty much. Like, if you've ever played the game Portal, basically he can do that. They're just not blue and orange colors. He can, and also he can just manifest them into the air. He doesn't need a surface or anything for them to be on.
Yeah, and just seeing how he beats enemies sometimes, like there were some big enemies that sometimes he just opened a portal and they punch himself in the face. Or
Yeah.
the only thing about the show where if I showed the nerd in me, where I was like, that's a bit convenient. He would do stuff like, let's say if he was dropping from a cliff to 1,000 feet drop, he would once he would teleport, it would give him a soft landing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that, obviously, if that didn't work, he would die.
Yeah. That kind of physics question. It's kind of like that whole argument that if you're in a falling elevator that has open doors on the sides, would you die if you just stepped out before the elevator actually crashed?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like that kind of
Yeah.
argument.
I never even thought of that. What's the answer to that? That's another question for another day. All right. Let's move on to the next character, which is Princess Amalia, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
The funny thing about her was when she's first introduced,
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was a really elegant person, but then at times she just turned into a spoilt brat.
Yeah.
And she was really funny to me. She made me laugh more than anything else.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, she is a princess, and she's not like the stereotypical on either side that either she's the princess that wants everyone to cater to her every whim, nor is she the one that has to buck the system and try to argue with everything. She does come from a lot of privilege, but she also wants to be an explorer too. It's just that she would prefer to sleep indoors and on a comfy bed than sleep outside on the dirt, which is kind of ironic since she's like a plant elemental manipulator and whatnot.
Yeah, cool powers as well.
Yeah.
And I liked her character design. She looks pretty, and she was funny. She actually made me laugh, especially between her and the little bodyguards, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, that was funny. And Next character. I don't want to go too long on this because this might take longer if we
Yeah.
start dwelling on this. But Mr. Sandy Grove or Groovy, I'll just call him Groovy for ease.
Yeah, we'll have to stick to something only because, since, as we mentioned, the mix-up between Sadly Grove or Tristapon.
Okay, I'll go with Sandy Grove then, if you don't mind.
Okay,
To be honest with you, he was the most annoying character in the show for me.
yeah,
But he was meant to be. He was meant to be obnoxious. He was obviously intentionally obnoxious. But to be honest with you, all through the show, I was waiting for that point where he wouldn't be obnoxious, and it kind of didn't come. Even near the end, where they started to give him the character development I wanted to, not really. I liked him a little bit, but I don't know. He just kind of got on my nerves all the way through.
yeah. Well, as I see it, though, it's like in the beginning, he's this kind of blowhard adventurer, like he's always ready to jump into action, but more often than not, gets his ass kicked somewhere in the process. It's only that in the second half of the series, he actually achieves becoming that badass, but that doesn't really change his personality much. He's still Mr. Gunho, jump into action, but at least now he can. It's that whole thing. He can now talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time.
I wish that came earlier though.
Yeah.
It comes real close to the end for me. Where I wish it came even more at the halfway point because, yeah. Well, that's all I'm going to say about that for now.
I will say it was still like a really great seeing his character develop in that couple of episodes when they show him go through that transformation.
It was.
And you can argue to some degree that some people, even if they overcome something, that doesn't really change their overall personality. Because the other thing is that he's still a doofus. Which apparently, from his race of people, the Eops, they are all considered just doofuses and all that. They're all just battle hungry. They're basically like frat boys in a way. They always are looking for a good excuse to fight.
Yeah, the thing that bothered me with him is just that he seemed so weak in the beginning, even after all his talk and near the end, when he finally got what he needed to make me respect him a bit,
Yeah.
it came too late. Let's just leave it at that anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, next character, Evangeline, the Amalia's bodyguard.
Yeah.
You go first.
Well, I think we should have also mentioned this with we did with Amalia, just telling the people their races. Evangeline is a Craw, which are essentially like the elvish type people in this world. And their special abilities that all of them are can produce arrows with magic. If you've ever seen that movie Immortal and the whole thing of there was that special bow and arrow from the gods that never needed any ammunition.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that with Henry Cavill, yeah.
Yeah. Basically the Craws pretty much do that anyway, so it's nothing special. They all manipulate magical arrows and whatnot. But her character, I really did like her since she wasn't the stereotypical stoic bodyguard or the grump of the group. She was very level-headed in everything that she went about doing.
Yeah, I agree. I liked her as well. She had a little bit of that tsundere tendency that the anime people like. But to be honest with you, she wasn't that. But I liked her overall.
Yeah.
She was the strongest female character in the whole show. And at the end, she had an episode that I absolutely loved, where she was in a trance.
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of my favorite episodes in the whole show. She was actually in a trance due to something that was controlled in her mind that was trying to show her things. I don't want to say anything else because that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
But that was one of the most... And that was really a greatly animated, creatively written scene as well. So, and... the last character I want to talk about before we just go through the rest quickly, because everyone else is a side character, is, am I pronouncing this right? Ruel?
Yeah.
Stroud?
Yeah.
Which is the old man of the team.
Yep, he is the old font of the group, and pretty much besides Sadly Grove, he's also the one that a lot of the best comedy bits comes from.
Yeah, he's the funniest character, and he was a character I would love to hear in English dub.
Oh yeah. Oh, and also people just to give you this is gonna sound kind of weird as well though, but he's from a race of people called the Enough Trubs who apparently they're all born just to look kind of old already,
Really? Hmm.
which is a kind of a running joke even in the second season about like how like he's really really old, but he still has family members who are also like even older looking than him. But the main thing about them is that they are known notoriously for being treasure hunters and very stingy people at it.
Hmm.
Yep. And that's where some of the best comedy comes from is just how stingy Ruel is and how pretty much he's like Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. All he really, really wants is a whole bunch of money, but never to spend it.
He's funny. He is obnoxious as well, a bit like Mr. Sandy Grove, but he's meant to be funny, and he's so obnoxious at times where people are really in danger, and he still wants to take that money or keep that money or keep something. I'm like, that's the kind of character. He's so bad, he makes me laugh.
Yeah.
You know, he really cracked me up, man. And I was when I was reading the bad stuff, I was like, pisser. I just want to hear this guy be an asshole. So yeah, he was the asshole of the group, and he was really funny.
It's also that he's really unassuming as well. Like when you look at the group, you would see him. He's an old man with a shovel, so you assume he must be the weakest out of them. But really, there came a point when they're battling. Well, we'll get to the bigger part of it, but essentially they're battling someone who's going to take out their strongest member first, and he goes for Ruel out of all of them.
Yeah, yes. I was always waiting for him to be like a true Yoda or something like that.
Yeah.
And I felt like they were still hiding that because they never really showed his true stuff in season 1. So I don't know what was going on with him there.
Well, I don't really think of it as that he's going to be like Yoda, like he's the master of combat, but as I see it is that because he's so old, he has more experience fighting than anyone else would. And that's why he's so unassuming when you look at him, because he doesn't want people to know he's already a good fighter, because then they're going to put up more of a fight fighting him. Whereas if they drop their guard down a bit, thinking, oh, he's just an old guy, what's he going to do? They're not going to see him throwing his shovel like a boomerang at them.
And that reminds me of another episode I really liked when they went to his house. That was funny.
Oh yeah, the little like it's almost D&D-ish in a way. It's that bag that just holds a large amount of space on the inside than it does on the outside.
Well, not even that. Not that one. Not that episode where they actually went to his house and he had that thief was along with them, tried to rob all the stuff from his house as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. His family like home where booby traps everywhere just to protect the amount of money he doesn't want anyone to know. And that's the other thing again. He's so unassuming because he looks like he's just a dirty beggar dressed in rags, but really he probably is like 9 times richer than Amalia would be, and she's a princess.
That's why I was surprised that you're money hungry. When I saw the episode, I was like, really? And people, that's a minor spoiler. Yeah, it's not a big deal. All right, let's move on. Actually, we got to talk about these two characters in a little bit of detail as well. Actually, this is a little bit of a spoiler because this character doesn't turn up until midway. And actually, I'll ask you, Joe, if we should actually talk about his character. Mm-hmm. His name is Adamai. Is that right?
Yeah.
Should we talk about him because it's a little bit of a spoiler because he makes his appearance halfway through the show?
I think we should probably leave him out on at least the bigger details about him. We can still say like what we thought about him as a character. Like, did you like him or did you kind of find him annoying at first?
I really liked him. He was like another Aang to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He was like he was like another Aang to me. But a much wiser one because trying to not go into spoilers here, he was more aware of who he was.
Yeah.
And the relationship between him and Yugo, that's what really got me into the show. The second half, where him and Yugo were stuck together for the rest of the series, that really was great writing. That was really great writing. And actually, My second favorite episode, I think, is when they were in the desert training
Oh yeah.
and they were being chased by a wolf. That was my favorite episode in the whole series.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this character. Him and Hugo are actually my two favorite characters in the show.
Hmm. I was kind of weirded out by him at first, just because most of what he was doing was just like being a trickster in a way, kind of like.
A comedian.
But yeah, you're right about that second half. He really does grow on you pretty quickly, and just how he is a lot like Aang. Like he's just all about having some fun for the most part until shit hits the fan. Then he's gonna buckle down and get ready to fight.
Yeah, and yeah, he's got a really great powers as well, which I'm not going to actually
Yeah.
mention. But anyway, moving on to last two characters. One isn't a character at all. Just that little creature looks like an angry bird. Az.
Oh yeah,
He
Hugo's
looks so
pet.
much like he looks like an angry bird. He acts like an angry bird. I'm like, did these guys get their inspiration from Angry Birds from this little thing? Because he actually looks exactly like an Angry Bird.
Well, I think if anything, Angry Bird got their inspiration from him. I doubt that's really the case because as people, as is a tiny little bird who his race of people are just populated in the Wakfu and Dofus game series. They're known as tofu, which
Yeah.
they're just little round birds with tiny little wings that just flap about. He's just there for like a lot of comedy relief, and he's Yugo's sidekick throughout most of it.
Yeah, he just when I saw him, it reminded me of those Angry Bird shorts that
Yeah.
are floating around now. So, and the last character I want to mention, which we can't go into many detail about, is the villain,
Oh yeah.
Nox.
Nox to me is like one of the most well written villains I have ever seen in any type of format. Like he is one of those villains that you know what he's doing is absolutely horrible. And again, we're not going to spoil it, but this is revealed in a special. But when you see it, you're like, oh my god, I kind of hope he actually achieves his goal now. I feel so sorry for him.
Yeah, when we first did the podcast, when you spoke about this, you did say the first series kind of sets him up as a threat, and that's another thing that I want to see what this villain's about. And the first half, he's more of a shadow figure, so I wasn't convinced. I was like, Joe, what's he talking about? I'm not convinced.
Yeah.
Now, the second half is a different story.
Yeah.
And the first thing that really just blew me away was just like you said. You said you saw the scene where he fights a dragon. That was the first thing you saw.
Yeah.
That was nearly halfway through the show. That was amazing.
I was just talking about the first episode, that scene with him and Grogolar on the bridge.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Because the first episode I actually watched that so separate from the rest. I actually forgot about that.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, that was my first introduction to just seeing the fighting and what they do in the series. Like, before I even knew anything else about the show, I almost thought that this was going to be kind of like a fighting game like story where it's just going to be people squaring off, fighting each other throughout most of it. Yeah, which I know it's kind of a weird thought process, but like going back to Nox's character, there's just so much that's interesting about him, from his character design to the way he talks and his mannerisms.
I think it's best if I say that. To be honest with you, when I first saw him, he was like, he did speak funny and he would pop in and out. So I thought, is this guy just going to be one of those, cloak and dagger kind of villains? Because I thought I don't like, that's kind of lame.
Yeah.
But, as what I would say, people, is he is a very good villain. By the end of the series, without even watching the OVA, I really liked him.
Yeah.
When I watched the OVA, there's a short OVA that explains his past and where he came from. Amazing.
Yes.
That is that alone could be a short animated feature. It is a short animated feature. You could watch standalone, but as me and Joe already discussed prior to recording this, you would say it should be watched after the series, right?
My personal thought is that it should be watched after, because it does, like, you kind of see hints a little bit about what Nox is throughout the series, but it's not until you see that episode that you understand like everything he's doing and why he's doing it, and it makes you rethink on what how you feel about him. It's in a way kind of like Alan Moore when he wrote The Killing Joke for the Joker and whatnot.
Mm.
And just seeing like what happened to that man that led him to become the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, but we can't go. We're not going to spoil what that's about for you.
Yeah.
You guys should just check it out for yourself. So, in summary, I would say this show has a great cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
The good, there's hardly any. Sandy Glove got on my nerves, but to be honest with you, he played his part, and he doesn't bring down the rest. All the other characters make up for him in abundance. So
Yeah.
you got good from me. So moving on. And these next categories won't take as long as the character. The characters always take the longest when it comes to anime
Yeah.
reviews. So, people, I know it's long, but this won't take much longer anyway. Storyline. Next, we're going to go on to storyline implementation, execution, and pacing. To speed this along, I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've even made a note of this. Episode 1 and 2 set the pace great. Episode 3 to 13, more or less just build up filler. And I think episode 10 to 13 was the one I really didn't like because they were in this weird football match for 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that at all. I was really bored by that. It was nice, the animation was nice and playful, but at that point, I was like, when is this show going to start? Because they were still just going. Nox hadn't been around for long.
Yeah.
He made his grand appearance in episode 14 to set the tone for the rest of the show, but up to that point, he was just in the background, and those 3 football episodes totally lost me. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that is the weakest point of the season. And it's even sadder because in season 2, they do pretty much the exact same thing. They have another 3-part episode devoted to this game of football, which people in what Boofball is in Wakfu, it's pretty much kind of like the equivalent to Quidditch in the Harry Potter universe. It's just this
that way.
ridiculous game that barely makes any full sense, but it's just supposed to be popular in the world that everyone loves it.
You know, if this was an English dub, it would have been like, whatever. It's just a bit of fun, but when you're reading bad subtitles and you're reading a bad episode, it really made it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was for me, but I'll just move on from that and say from episode 14 to 26 or 25, whatever the last episode was, greatness. So for me, I mean, the pacing, it's got that pacing where I understand what they were doing. You can't just jump into it. It's aimed towards kids. I understand that. It starts off really, the first 2 episodes are quite intense. It shows a bad guy, it shows Hugo, and then but then from episode 3 to 13, it's just little misadventures, little jokes here, and I'm like, yeah, the kids will love this, but if you stuck around past episode 13 and you're 14 onwards, then you're gonna get the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I got. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. But the way I see it is, this is where I come up with that idea that it's a lot like Avatar: The Last Airbender in the first season.
True.
Because a lot of the beginning half of that series was like just setting up the world and also getting you to know the characters as well. Because that's the other thing. Like, that's where there's just some minor, like, character developments just to, like, let you know what these characters are about. But also just showing you the world itself. And yeah, they are mostly just misadventures and silly one-and-done episodes. But there's also a good deal of, like, action in there. Like, let's not discredit when they had one that was kind of like a little bit of a horror episode in a way when they introduced a minor villain named Vampiro.
Oh yeah, I remember the episode. That was another one that got me. That was a little bit darker than I thought. I think he even he turned the old man against them, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, there was episodes like that, and then also like episodes like just focusing in on the characters. Like there's an episode when Amalia is taken ill because she got poisoned by a creature of some sort.
That was a good episode.
Yeah, and so it was Hugo and Ruel who had to go and try to find where they can find the antidote to the poison that she was suffering from. And that was just like a great little character moment between Hugo and Ruel, which we did forget to mention that Ruel is kind of like Hugo's uncle to a degree. He's best friends with Hugo's adopted father.
Hmm.
So there was like just this kind of like uncle and nephew bonding moment in that episode.
Yeah.
But then also like the episode we talked about of Ruel's like secret of being a filthy rich old man and whatnot. Like that was also a great episode just to show you what he's like as a person. But again, like the episode with the buff balls, like that one took up 3 episodes. I honestly felt that did not need to be any longer than 2 episodes at a maximum.
At maximum, yeah, I was shocked when it was 3. I have to. Well, 2, I was like, to be continued. Fair enough. 3,
Yeah,
but no.
especially because they really, really dragged out that process. I mean, there were some funny moments in it, but they just kind of really dragged it unnecessarily more than it should have been.
So I do have to say those early episodes were not that bad. The 3 football ones were, but let's say episodes between 3 to 10, they were pretty good character building. Just you need that. I'm not gonna say you should just jump in guns a blazing with constant storyline. Avatar didn't do that, and I even said on my Avatar review,
Mhm.
I dropped Avatar when I first watched it because I was bored. But again, it's the subs that were bad
Yeah,
and no dub. Just these 2 things has made it a bit of a chore. So,
yeah,
but like I said, there was a payoff in the end anyway. So
yeah.
at least you're getting a warning, people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's why we're doing this review, to let you know that it's got a bit of a slow burn, like all good things, but if you hang in there, there's a payoff.
Yeah. And I mean, there is also some like really funny moments in those like episodes 3 to 10, like the episode that's titled "The Ugly Princesses."
Oh yeah, when Sandy Go tried to jump up the tower,
Yeah,
and then when he got in there, he got a nice surprise.
yeah,
That was funny. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, it was. I'm telling you, those subs were so bad. People, if you
yeah,
do get your hands on it, I wish there was a good subbing group, man. But someone needs to do that again. I mean, it's a good show. These guys need to get an official English sub. You know what I mean? And just get it on Netflix or something. I actually thought the show was on Netflix when I first heard about it. I don't know.
yeah. Oh, but we haven't really touched on the second half so much, though. But
I wouldn't do that anyway
yeah,
because they just need to know that's the better half, in my opinion. But unless you want to say something, feel free to.
I won't say like any specific spoilers or whatnot, but like this is where I get the comparison with the Avatar series is that once you reach that episode 14, that's like the ending of season 1 of Avatar, where they show you this is the threat that the Fire Nation poses. This is the
Hmm.
danger they can accomplish. Episode 14 to 17 shows you why Knox is not someone to mess with. He is so much more powerful that if they were like really out of their depth just even being around him, pretty much.
I'm not gonna lie, Nox is a better villain than the Fire Lord in Avatar.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. But essentially from there, like after those 3 episodes, it then kind of like pulls back a little bit, but not by much. Just basically saying like they now realize what kind of danger they're in, so they need to get ready. And then the final, I think, 3 episodes or so is again a lot like the ending of Avatar, in that it's just gonna be this big all-out like battle.
It's really intense. I was surprised how dark it was. It
Oh
gets
yeah,
very, very dark, and even a little bit darker than it's the ending's a little bit darker than the last Airbender, and to be honest with people, I'm surprised it even went there.
Oh yeah.
I'm not hyping it up. I'm just telling it how it is, people. Seriously, if it was shit, I would tell you, and I'm telling you the truth. I'm a critical person. You guys already know that.
Hmm.
It goes from light to dark. This show goes from light to dark, definitely.
Oh yeah.
If I didn't say this, I liked the ending of season 1. I really did. They
Hmm.
they did some things in there I didn't think they would do. It isn't, this. I wouldn't because it's a spoiler. Doesn't end on the lightest note.
Yeah.
It ends on a note where I'm like, that's a good series.
Hmm.
That's a good series. So before we get to our likes and dislikes, because I don't have a lot of dislikes to say except for those 3 episodes we were harped on about already. Um, do you want to let the people? There is a second season, so you already told me it really isn't up to par with the first.
Yeah. I think the second season, it's not bad, but the problem is season one set such a high standard that it just really didn't hold a candle by comparison. And I'm not going to spoil things especially because there's a big spoiler within the first couple of episodes on what happens that changes everything. But essentially, it opens up really strong, but then it kind of goes back to being like the beginning of the first season where it's a lot of them going on misadventures and a little bit more character development. And again, they have to focus on Boofball again, which for another 3 episodes and dragged on as well.
Mm.
But the bigger problem is that they introduced the villain of the series again about the halfway point. But the problem is that he's only introduced to us, the audience, but not to the characters themselves. Like, they don't see the villain at all. Like, the whole thing with season one is that they see Nox, they see the power he's able to wield, and they see, like, just how insane he is going to go just to reach his goal. Whereas, pretty much in a way, it's almost like having all of that happen off camera in season two, because the main characters just don't see any of it. So after that point, when we know there's an imminent threat, they're still going on these misadventure comedy episodes, some of which were like really unneeded and just kind of lackluster. And and then it's just about like the last 3 episodes that it's almost like they kind of realize like, oh shit, that's right, we need to have a big epic battle again. Yeah. But I mean, there is some good stuff to it. Like, now this is a minor character that shows up in the beginning and then throughout the series, but there's a character known as Remington who is a professional thief whose whole goal is that he's all into collecting these weapons known as the shoes. Which we did forget to talk about that with Tristapon with his sword, Rubelix.
Well, we can't do everything, so don't worry about
it. But here, just a quick rundown, people. In this world, there are weapons and items that are demonically possessed by these creatures called shoes.
Yeah.
And Tristapon is a shoo guardian, so to speak, where it's his job to make sure that they stay inside these items. But these items will talk trash to anyone who's wielding it. And if the wielder lets it, these items can end up taking them over as well. But this guy, Remington, in season 2, like, he's not a shoo guardian, whereas, like, they're all about upholding and making sure these shoes don't get out. Remington, he's more of a scumbag anyways, but he has a bunch of these items. Like, he has a big, huge sword that has a bunch of eyeballs looking around. He has 2 guns, a knife, and also a gauntlet of some sort. And the funny thing is like, his shoes around him, they're actually kind of enjoying their time with him. Like they're actually laughing about how much they like this guy when he's like threatening to attack people and whatnot.
Sounds like a good villain to me.
Well, he's not so much a villain, he's more of a
Yeah.
side character, but he is very entertaining to watch.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah, but then again, like there was also a lot of problems. Like they introduce later on Evangeline. They introduce her younger sister, but when they introduce her, it just seems kind of forced and also just kind of lazy because she's there to just enter more conflict into the group.
They showed some flashes at the end of season one. They never explained about her, by the way. I did see that
Yeah,
when you went into her mind,
yeah.
but they never explained what that was about. So, all right. Well, sorry, Joe. We got to wrap up the review because we do have some other stuff to talk about at the end. So, but we are at the end. I just wanted you to give the people an idea because you told me ultimately due to well, let's wrap this up and say this. Would I recommend this series? Yes, I would. The problem is the availability, the bad subs,
Hmm.
no dub. You have to go and watch it online. It was a chore for me to find. It's like these things hold it back.
Hmm.
It's a shame. If I had to rate it on its own merits, it would get a solid B. But in reality, with all the problems it has, in terms of physically getting it, it's more like, look, if you're the type of person who wants to watch a good show and you're willing to put up with these physical drawbacks, then go ahead. But that's more of an acquired taste. That's more of you're that kind of person
Hmm.
who's willing to go through that. But to the general watcher who's just spoiled for choice, I'd rather watch all that online, I'd rather watch, wherever's on, then you're probably not going to take the time out to go and find it, which is a shame because I'm sure, as you're going to say, Joe, it's worth the check, man. I'm glad you recommended it to me because it was something different. The flash animation, the character designs, the storyline, it was unique enough that I was like, you know what? It was completely different from everything I usually see. It wasn't like anime. It was just like a breath of fresh air. Yes, there were things that annoyed me here and there, not so much to do with the show itself, except for those stupid football episodes. Overall, I would recommend this. It's a good show, and from an American standpoint, this would do really well in America if it was dubbed because it looks cartoony. It's Flash animation. It would actually put Flash in a good light as well.
Hmm.
There's a lot of pros. It would make the French look good. There's a lot of pros for this series to come out, and I'm surprised that since the game is doing so well, that the creators aren't pushing for this to get dubbed or, all right, not even a dub, to get a proper sub or any kind of release, even on Netflix or something. You would think because we got these digital services now,
Hmm.
you should push for that. Because to be honest with you, and let me end my ramble on saying this, people were complaining that the channel, I don't know if it's Canal in France that announced it, they were upset that they did have the show on their website for I think a year and then they took it down.
Mm.
Now that at least if they had it on their website, people could see it somehow
Yeah.
with subtitles. But they don't. There's no real way to get it. No legal way. You can't even get it on home video.
Yeah.
I don't even think they got a French release,
Well, I
which is bad.
well, I think they probably do have it in it being a French show. You can probably buy French DVD copies, but they probably don't have English dubs to them or anything, or English subs. I meant.
I have to look into that, but no, probably you're probably right. But
Yeah.
from what I could see, because on one thing I didn't mention, the picture quality I had for the first season, the first half wasn't good as well. It wasn't just the subs. The picture quality wasn't very good. Only the last half looks like some team really got a hold of those last 12 episodes and subbed it and got the best quality. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recommend the show on its own merits. It's a really good show,
Yeah.
fun, funny, good adventure. First season, it wraps up. For me, it's like I don't need to see any more, even though it ends on a bit of a darker note. It was good enough for me.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it gets a solid B for me. That's my final rating.
For me, I really just love this series because it is, like, as you mentioned, it's something vastly different. I really love the character designs and the world they build for it. The game, however, I'm not such a fan of, but I don't play that many MMOs to begin with, so it's no loss. But again, it does upset me that this show doesn't get a release, and especially even more so that they dubbed the first 3 episodes, but then did nothing with it. And that's just aggravates me because it should have been fully dubbed. Like, this is a show that would do really well, especially when people like shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, anyone who loves that show is going to like Wakfu as well.
You know what I would think? Something tells me if somebody put this on YouTube, YouTube will take it down because the people will be like, no, content, which is another thing.
Yeah,
Because some shows like this that are gone, you can find them on YouTube. But I couldn't find this on YouTube. I
yeah,
found clips on YouTube,
yeah.
but not one episode you could find on YouTube. Not one.
hmm And that's the sad thing as well. Especially, I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to tell people to really check this out when there isn't a way to just say, go here, watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
They used to have a page that was like a fan made page of Wakfu called the Brotherhood of Tofu that did have like the links to all the downloads and whatnot to get copies of it, but that got taken down too.
If people are wondering how I saw it, I downloaded a torrent of it. But like I've complained for the whole season, the torrent that probably Joe even got as well might have been the same one.
Yep.
The first half was pissing me off a little bit because of the quality and the subs. So, but unfortunately, sometimes I hate to use the word piracy, but we have to resort to it when people that put sweat and tears into their own hard work, they don't make it easy for us to watch. So,
Yep.
what else? If you want me to see it,
Yeah.
But hey, I think we're doing you a favor. Whoever's this, if you guys are listening, the people's producers, which obviously are not probably, we're trying to promote the show for you. That's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Because as I see it though, if they're not gonna allow us to watch it legally in any way, shape, or form, like hell, I would have bought the videos online digitally if there was an option for it.
I would to support the show. It's worth it.
hmm But if they're not going to give us a legal means by it, then they leave us no other method than to just pirate it. Which, again, I don't have, like, I'm a little bit against pirating only if there is an available means to actually purchase it.
hmm
But, again, they don't leave us any options, so it's piracy it is.
So, Joe, what's your rating with our Planet Tyro rating system?
I would give Wakfu a first class, despite the problems with trying to download it and those football episodes. It still, to me, is something people should really, really check out. Season 2, however, I would say that's more of the watchable range of it. Like, you don't
hmm
need to watch it, but if you want more of the world and to see more adventures with the characters, it's still fun to check out. It's just not as strong.
Yeah, and that's the final word. You see, we put about an hour and a bit into this review, so people, I guess you're gonna have to make up your own mind. But hey, at this point, I gotta thank you, Joe, for the recommendation.
Thank you.
It was more or less a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was nice to see something completely different because I'm really pissed off with how anime's going right now. Japanese anime is just following a very formulaic, boring, stereotypical,
hmm
structure, which is just pissing me off a little bit.